And this week, the royal family celebrated Commonwealth Day, the day where we acknowledge the association of 56 independent countries, almost all which form part of the former British Empire, of course, which includes the great nation of Australia. And with so much angst in the world, it's great to have 55 other good friends spanning the globe. Joining me now is Royal Editor for the Daily Mirror, Russell Myers. Russell, the royal family were out in force for Commonwealth Day, and what was the King's message this year?
Well, hi there, Caroline. Well, listen, first and foremost, it was great to see the King and the Princess of Wales at this year's Commonwealth Day service, because obviously they had to miss the last one due to being diagnosed individually with cancer just within weeks of each other. So great to see them leading the family out in force. And it was a message of unity, not only with the family, but of course the 56 nations that have come together to form the Commonwealth, the family of nations it's often described as. And certainly, you know, in periods of war and distress, certainly that's going on in Europe and the Middle East at the moment. And the King's message was extending beyond the Commonwealth, I think, and trying to get people to listen not only to the people beside them, but of course to their friends and neighbours around the world. And certainly we had the King's message this year was all about unity in troubled times. And when you extend that to the theme of the Commonwealth, which was to allow each individual nation to thrive on its own, I think we had a very rounded message for people coming together this year.
And a great unifier, obviously, for many of those nations is the sport of rugby and the Prince and Princess of Wales. I love that friendly rivalry they have for the Six Nations. We saw it again this week. Tell us about it.
Well, big weekend of sport across Europe. Of course, it was the finale of the Six Nations. England just lost out to France, eventually taking the crown. But there was a big game between England and Wales to try and get England into that pole position. They absolutely thrashed Wales. They were on a bit of a losing streak, and they rode out eventual winners. I think it was 68-15 and 14 in the end. So we, of course, have the Prince of Wales as the patron of the Welsh Rugby Union, and Kate as the patron of the English team as well. So a bit of rivalry within the households. They did attend the match together. And the England team, being good sports, invited the Prince of Wales even into the dressing room to meet them after the game when Princess of Wales went down to see them. So I think, you know, great to see the Princess of Wales out in force again. And we're going to have a few more of these joint engagements this year, because as Kate is finding her way back to duties after her cancer treatment, I expected that there would be a bit more sort of a support around the family network for her to get back to work.
And she looked like she was having fun. Even at Commonwealth Day, she looked very happy and all smiles and great energy. And I think but it's been great to see for the beginning of this year. Now, you'll recall the anti-monarchy protests around the time that Charles ascended the throne. In one of those instances, it's been found the police acted unlawfully. So what was the reasoning here, and what's the broader issue?
Well, of course, the broader issue is the right to protest. And I think that we're seeing this more with Charles's reign. Certainly, it's something that hasn't really fazed him. But Republic, the anti-monarchy group, has grown in numbers, and they have grown in voice since Charles acceded the throne. And this harks back to September 2022, when the late Queen Elizabeth II had passed away. Charles had ascended the throne. And there was a small protest going outside St James's Palace in London at the time, and a chap called Simon Hill, a trainee Baptist minister at the time, just walked past and said who elected him. And one of the police officers heard it, and he was duly arrested and charged with obscene threatening behaviour, which seems kind of ludicrous. So, you know, when you ever speak to Charles in these moments, whether it's been members of the Commonwealth or people's right to protest, he's always said privately that people should be allowed to express their voice. And I think that there have been several instances in the police's mind where they have been heavy-handed with arresting people. We saw it during the coronation. They didn't want any disturbances, but Simon Hill has been apologised to by the Met Police, and he's received £2,500 compensation. So possibly a lesson for the police to not be so heavy-handed with these protesters who are just expressing their right to protest.
Yeah, and look, for the protests that they were, from my recollection, they were not violent or anything of that nature. There may have been others, but I didn't see them. But you know, we do have that sort of liberty. We do have the right to protest. And if it's not violent, I don't see why it should be an issue. Now, still with the King, and look, he has been very skillfully engaged in recent weeks, and we have spoken of this in that soft diplomacy, particularly vis-a-vis Trump. He's come out in defence of the Canadians this week, which is not surprising at all, really.
Well, no, of course he is, of course, King of Canada, as he is King of Australia, and he's got vested interests in the relationship between Canada and the US. And what a tinderbox it's been at the moment, with Donald Trump firing off insults left, right and centre to his Canadian neighbours, calling it, you know, the potential 51st state of the United States, talking about the potential annexation of Canada. And this is very, very troubling, not only to Canadians, but also to the King as well. We saw King Charles meet Justin Trudeau, the outgoing Prime Minister of Canada, just a couple of weeks ago at Sandringham. And this week he was presenting a ceremonial sword to Black Rod, which is part of his ceremonial duties as sovereign. And he was talking about the pressing matters which are of interest to both parties. Royal sources were telling me that, of course, that would have involved the conversations between Donald Trump and Canada. Of course, Canada has a new Prime Minister in Mark Carney, so it'd be very interesting to see the dynamic between the two men moving forward, and something that King Charles is going to take very, very seriously. He's got a trip planned there next year, which will go hand in hand with a royal tour to the United States. So I guess that anything can happen, and certainly when Donald Trump is speaking, we're finding new things that he's angered about day to day. So I think there's certainly the British government and King Charles will watch the situation very closely.
I think they will, and I believe the Canadians are due for a general election towards the end of the year, so it will be interesting to see how that issue feeds into that election. Now, on to the races, and it was like a royal family reunion this week at Cheltenham. What can you tell us?
Well, it was, Cheltenham, great, fantastic race meet here in the UK. It brings all the sort of celebrities and people from the sporting world. Fantastic festival of racing to experienced by the royals as well. We saw the Queen there with some friends, and her ex-husband as well, big horse racing fan, Andrew Parker Bowles. We saw Zara Tindall there, of course. Princess Anne was mixing with some friends and family as well. And it's going to give I enjoy this sort of periods of time because it gives the royals a chance to sort of relax before the busy spring period. Of course, we've got the King and Queen off to Italy in just a couple of weeks. That tour should be shaping up nicely, apart from, of course, the Pope Francis, his illness, which will possibly mean that the King and Queen do not have an audience with the Pope. So I imagine we'll find some more in the coming days than that. But in terms of Cheltenham, fantastic to see the royals out, and looking forward to a packed spring schedule here in Europe.
And lastly, I've only got about a minute, but Dame Prue Leith, former judge of the Great British Bake Off, she's no fan of the Duchess of Sussex. What does she have to say?
Well, I think that's putting it mildly, Caroline, because she is not a fan. I mean, some people are, some people aren't, and certainly Meghan's new show, With Love Meghan, has been very, very divisive, hasn't it? But Prue Leith, the baking goddess of our screens, has said that she's not a fan of Meghan. She said she didn't really get the sort of touchy-feely broadcasting nature of her show. She didn't think that it was altogether watchable television to just talk about what you enjoy doing with your friends. And I guess it has been pretty divisive, Meghan's show, hasn't it? Whether you like it or whether you loathe it, people are talking about it. Maybe that's just what Meghan and Netflix wanted. They're bringing it back for a second season that was recorded alongside the first. So let's see, and let's wait and see what the ratings do, because Meghan is a sort of tour de force at the moment with her show and with her new podcast. So I suppose people are still talking about her. So, and that's got to be good for her.
Well, we are definitely talking about it. Thank you so much, Russell Myers.